All right, in this video, we are going to learn how to solve a quadratic by taking a square root. There are 4 methods for how to solve a quadratic. This is the easiest one, but also the one that you can use the least often. Like there's a lot of restrictions on when you can use it. It only works when the circumstances are just perfect. So it's a great one to know because when you can use it, it's easy, but it's also not super helpful because we can't always use it. All right, so when can we use this? There are two, well, there's one situation, but it usually looks 2 ways. So if you have something that's in a format where if it was in standard form, it would be ax squared plus c equals, and it doesn't have to be 0 in this case, it can just be some other random number. I'll call it d. The key here, though, is that there is no bx. So there's no linear term. The b value is 0. There's nothing there. The only x value, there's only one x in the equation, and it's an x squared. So that it works then. And there's one other scenario in which you only have one x in the equation, and that's when that x ends up being in parentheses with a square on the outside. So that also works. So in a general case, that might look like an a value on the outside. That number doesn't matter, right? But the square goes on the outside. You can have something added if you want. Let's see, right? Like it can equal something, but you can't, the key here is you can't have more than one x in the equation. And there can't be like a bx term, right? Only one x. So only one x. All right, so that brings us to the how. How do we do this? We solve using PEMDAS. Just like we've done pretty much everything else all year. We have to follow order of operations in order to do some solving steps, where we do the same thing to both sides and we work our way to a solution. Okay, so let's do one example of each type. This is example 1. Let's say we have 2x squared minus 30 equals 2. Feel free to pause here, try and solve it on your own. You're just literally using PEMDAS. There's going to be something a little bit different right at the end, but give it a shot. So I'm going to solve by doing plus 30 on both sides, because if I follow order of operations, when we're solving, we work backwards, right? So what's the furthest out thing from the x squared, right? Closest to the x is the exponent. There's no parentheses. Then there's the multiplication. Then there's the addition subtraction. So for solving going backwards, the addition subtraction is what we do first. So 2x squared equals 32. And then the next step would be that multiplication, because that's 2 times x squared. So x squared equals 16. And then at this point, if we think about it, x must be 4, right? Because some number times itself equaling 16. 4 squared equals 16. But there's also another answer, because 4 times 4 equals 16. But we know that a negative times a negative is also a positive. So that means that negative 4 squared also equals 16. So when we're solving, usually we're going to take, I'm going to rewrite this just for the sake of notes. You're going to take the square root of both sides. That's the way we show it. And that's going to tell us that x equals plus or minus the square root of 16. But we know what the square root of 16 is, right? So we're not actually going to write it like that. We're going to write it as 4. If it was not a nice square root, if this was like the square root of 15, then we would still leave it as a square root of 15, or we would plug it into a calculator and get those decimal approximations. All right, let's do another example. Once again, I'd love you to try this one on your own first. So let's say we have 2 times x plus 1 in parentheses squared minus 5 equals 5. Give it a shot. Okay, so starting with the outermost stuff, we're going to, oh, and we don't start with that because the addition there is like locked inside parentheses. So that's actually going to be basically the last thing because the parentheses are way at the front, right? Okay, so I'm going to start by doing that addition subtraction. Oops. And then this multiplication right here, because that is multiplication. So now I have the parentheses and I have the square. So the parentheses come first, which means that solving backwards, they come last. So I do the exponent first. I'm going to take the square root of the whole thing and the square root of the whole thing over here. So I have x plus 1 equals, now remember, when I do that square root, I have to consider the positive option and the negative option. Because whatever this stuff in here is, if it came out to be a negative and I squared it and got a 5, or it could come out to be a positive and I squared it and got a 5. Like either way would work. So I have to take plus or minus the square root of 5. Just remember, whenever you're undoing a square, you have to take the positive and the negative possibilities. All right, so then my last step here, I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. So I can write this as x equals -1 plus or minus the square root of 5. Or I can break it up into two different answers. Like that is two answers just written in this compact format. That's called a plus or minus symbol. So I can also say x equals -1 plus the square root of 5, or x equals -1 minus the square root of 5. And if, depending on context, if you want exact answers, that's what you'd leave. If you want approximations, then you plug it into a calculator. So I'd be like, well, -1 plus square root 5. So this one is x is approximately 1.24, rounding accurately, or -1 minus the square root of 5 gives me approximately -3.24. So these are the exact answers there or there. This is the approximate answer. All right. Just a couple reminders. So if you try and take the square root of a negative number, that's an automatic no solution. You don't have to continue with the problem. The moment you get that no solution, you are done. Any sort of negative. Okay. And just anytime you undo a square, anytime you undo a square, you have to take the plus or minus of the answer. All right, let's do the practice problem. Please solve 3 times x plus 5 squared plus 1 equals 10. Good luck.